We now move on to the first of our poems from Jackie Kay. Jackie Kay is a Scottish writer, and I believe she was the national poet of Scotland for a while. She's one of the poets which you would look at if you're doing, you know, Nat 5 or higher English. And what we're going to look at today, okay, is the poem My Grandmother's Houses, which is a poem where the speaker reflects on her relationship and her memory of her grandmother. Okay. Okay. So it begins. Obviously, the grandmother, she is on the second floor of a tenement. From her front room window, you see the cemetery. So in this poem, okay, in the poem, the speaker is going to lay out a couple different places where the grandmother lives. You could say settings of the poem. There's a couple different settings on the poem. And the settings themselves, or the places that she mentions, in a sense, represent the life of the grandmother herself. Okay, the life or the life journey, if you like, of the grandmother as a person. So it begins here. She is on the second floor of a tenement. Now, if you notice, it doesn't say the house is on a second floor of a tenement or her where she lives is on. It says she is on. What this tells you, okay, is that the grandmother and her flat, i.e., where she lives in the beginning here, she's been living there for so long. Okay, she's been in this place for so long that they're now synonymous. Right? They're one and the same thing. There's no separation between her and where she lives. And where she lives is what's a tenement. Tenement is an old style house, which is very, if you're from Glasgow or if you've been to Glasgow, you know what it's talking about. It's like the house which has different floors to it. In the middle of the building, there's a stairwell. Okay, we call it a close. And this is an old tenement, okay, in which the close, i.e., the stairwell, had a toilet inside of it. Okay, so the people in this building, people in this building all shared the same bathroom. Okay, so it's an old style tenement. It's like this. Okay, so she lives in one of these. Okay, and this was essentially the housing of the working class, something like that. Okay, like this. You can see the bathroom is in the stairwell. In the stairwell. So this is stairs, that's stairs. So all the neighbors, they shared the same bathroom. So you can see the grandmother, okay, is a woman who was quite humble. She's from a working class background, didn't have much money, and she's lived in this building for a long time. So you can see that she's quite content with her life and she's not a person who complains. Yeah, she's like a hardworking, old school woman. And from the window, you can see the cemetery. So this is two locations, two settings in the poem. Okay, one is the tenement, the other is the cemetery. And what we can say is the idea would be that she would live in the house until she passes away, and then she would be buried in the cemetery, the graveyard in front of the house. That was the idea. Okay. Anyway, so now we go inside the house. Excuse me. Now we go inside the house, and the speaker says, her bedroom is my favorite. Newspapers dating back to the war, so she's lived here at least since the war. Probably talking about the Second War, World War Two. So she's lived here at least 40, 50 plus years. Newspapers dating back to the war, covering every president she's gotten since the war. So essentially, the grandmother is someone who you could call her a hoarder. That might be the more modern hoarder, more modern phrasing. Or if you want to be kinder, you could say she's someone who collects things. She doesn't throw things away. And basically, she's collected all the presents that she's been given since the time of the Great War, not the Great War, World War Two. And what that tells you is that she places a lot of value on the past. Okay, so the grandmother places a lot of value on her past. She doesn't like to throw things away. She values them. And if you look at the things that she has wrapped up, they are extremely simple things which we today would consider quite cheap and we'd probably throw away. Yeah, without a second thought. Which tells you that again, the grandmother didn't grow up with a lot of money, and also it reflects the fact that during World War Two and obviously World War One too, the First War and the Great Second War, people had to ration what they had. Okay, money wasn't just floating around everywhere for everyone. People had to ration what they had, and life became very difficult. So she remembers those times, and so she values simple things. She values simple things, and she keeps them near her. Again, telling you she cherishes the past. Okay, she cherishes the past. Now she gets a letter. What does she want with anything modern? She gets a letter, okay, which tells her that she's going to move to a new house. Now, what I think this is talking about is, I believe in the 60s or the 70s, many people in tenements were moved to new buildings, okay, what we call high flats. Other people might call them apartment buildings, high rises. It's basically the building which looks like this. These were considered modern. Okay, these were considered modern, you know, uh, like this, because people were moved out of those tenement buildings, the smaller ones, into these, into these. And the idea was to take the people who are living in sort of poverty, rats, sharing a bathroom and all that, and essentially move them into these high rises, these apartment buildings, to give them a better standard of life. The only problem, okay, the only problem was that um, many communities were split apart, okay, because people were moved, say, from one community, they'd be moved to different locations or different high rises. Okay, some neighbors would go here, some would go there. And so what ended up happening is a lot of communities got split. And what that led to was people feeling kind of isolated, feeling like they don't belong to anyone or anything. And that's what led to a lot of the crime, yeah, alongside not having jobs and alongside not really having much to do in different places around the city. Yeah. Anyway, so the grandmother gets moved to one of these high rises. Okay. She gets moved to one of these high rises, and now she has her own bathroom. She has running water, as opposed to maybe in the past she would have had to get water from a maybe a communal source, maybe like even a well, or if not a well, then like a tap, which is shared. Um, and yes, so our house is nicer, okay, but it takes time for her to get used to. It takes time for her to get used to. She doesn't like it at first, and she takes some time to get used to it. Okay. Um, okay. Something else. Even at 70, she cleans people's houses. So the grandmother is still active and working even in her elderly age. And again, this just goes to the point of she comes from a generation of being very hardworking, not complaining, being grateful for any small thing that you have, any small amount of money that you get. And also, her grandmother is uh, traditionally religious. Okay, she goes to church on Sundays, and the speaker says it feels like there's ghosts in here, talking about how mostly it's old people or elderly people who are in the church. It's the older generation, and her parents are not part of that. They don't believe. Okay, they don't believe. Okay. Um, so the grandmother makes it a point to take the speaker with her when she goes to the church. So she's basically teaches her her values. Okay, she teaches her about hard work. She teaches her about good manners, which we'll see later in the poem. And the speaker cares about her grandmother a lot. Okay, she values her a lot. And one way we know this is if you look at this quote, you can see what has been capitalized. Okay, is God, Glasgow, and Grant, which you could translate to these are the three things the speaker values the most, or she values them a lot. Okay, and the fact that she puts Glasgow and Gran alongside God would tell you how much she values the city and also how much she values her grandmother. Okay. Um, good. Okay, it goes on. By the time I'm 7, we're almost the same height. So her grandmother was kind of a small woman, but she still walks quickly. So even though she is older, still she doesn't make excuses. Still she works hard and she does her job enthusiastically. Yeah, she does her job enthusiastically. Okay, so they go to this house. It's a fancy house, and um, the speaker describes the piano as being a one-winged creature. So we can say the speaker isn't used to pianos. She's not used to these fancy kind of things, luxuries, because she's grown up simple alongside her grandmother. And also the fact that she calls it a creature shows to some extent that the values of the grandmother about, uh, being humble or not valuing luxuries, excess, being content with the small things you have, valuing the small things you have sort of rubbed off on her to where her natural reaction to the piano is to view it with some kind of criticism. That makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, good. Um, okay, good, good. So she's playing the piano, then she gets bored, and then the lady who owns the piano and owns the house comes to the piano and says to her, "Sing me a song." Now, there's a very strange quote in here. Okay, this one, all smiles that make pimples run up my arms. Strange quote. And there's essentially two ways you can understand this quote, yeah. One is normal, one is weird, yeah. Okay, the normal way to understand this quote is that the speaker is afraid or nervous with the woman, and that's why she gets goose pimples. Um, she gets nervous, yeah, because the woman's scary, something like that. Okay. Two, two is, and this is the weird translation or interpretation, it's the weird one, is that, uh, okay, if we read this, you'll see what I'm saying. Okay, the woman comes to, all smiles, that makes goose pimples on her arms. Would you sing me a song? And then she says, lovely, she says, beautiful child. Skin the color of cafe au lait, type of coffee. Cafe au what? Now, the other interpretation, the weird one, is that the woman, to some extent, it's a weird interpretation. The woman is attracted to this speaker, to the speaker, who is obviously young. She's a child yet, so it's weird. And the speaker is in return, she likes the woman back, yeah, which was why you get the goose pimples. Okay. Now, obviously, I don't know if that interpretation's true yet. It's a bit strange, but I say this because the writer herself, the speaker, um, is herself attracted to women, and what this could be is sort of talking about an early experience where she realized this or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, you don't need to go that deep yet. You can just say that the speaker is afraid, but I have to present it, yeah, because it's a weird. He says, "Lovely, beautiful child." Yeah, it's a bit weird, yeah. So I don't want you to be confused. What could it mean? So those are the two. Yeah, you can pick whichever one you think makes more sense. Okay. Okay. Anyway, Kathy or what? She's not being any bother. No, you just get back to your work. I see her like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So basically, they leave the house and then they go back home, and the grandmother sort of is disciplining her and tells her how to have good manners. She smacks her, so old school sort of discipline. Smacks her, tells her to sit up straight. Okay, and now we have a return to the beginning in terms of phrasing. She is on the ground floor of a high rise. From her living room, you see ambulances screaming their way to the infirmary. Okay, so we have high rise, infirmary, tenement, cemetery. Okay, four places. High rise, infirmary, tenement, cemetery. You can say that these are the four stages of the grandmother's life, in that she starts in the tenement, she moves to the high rise or apartment building. She will go to the infirmary, which is next to the high rise, and then eventually she will finish in the cemetery. And the way that this connects back to the beginning, you could say that at this point now the grandmother is comfortable in the house, and she now views this high rise as her own. That's it. Okay, that's the poem. And in terms of the key theme in the poem, the key theme in this poem, it's going to be something like the past. That's one. Okay, the past. Or attachment to the past, something like that, which is obviously the grandmother. It's going to be something like belonging. In other words, where the grandmother feels she belongs, house-wise. And then obviously a big one is going to be relationships or love. Okay, obviously between the speaker and the grandmother. Okay, that's family even. You could say family too. Okay, anyway, so that's the poem. Real simple, real simple. If you have any questions, just put them below.